Wealthy, billionaire takes mistress on luxurious date, but pregnant wife exposes him publicly. On a mist-shrouded evening in the heart of London, a black limousine slid up to the grand entrance of the Savoy Hotel. Stepping out was Marcus Beaumont, billionaire investor, philanthropist, and soon-to-be father. Although the world believed he was the epitome of class and commitment, especially to his pregnant wife, Caroline Evers, he was not walking arm in arm with the devoted woman who carried his child. Instead, his companion was the enigmatic Genevieve "Jenny" Palmer, draped in a glittering designer gown. Little did Marcus suspect that across the city, Caroline had uncovered his secret rendezvous and was planning a public exposure that would rock high society to its core. Marcus Beaumont was a man who thrived on perfection. In the rarefied world he inhabited, people admired his commanding presence and sophisticated charm. Born into wealth, but having amplified that fortune through a series of shrewd investments in technology startups, Marcus was the golden boy of London's elite. Tabloids praised him for his philanthropic outreach, generous donations to cancer research at King's College Hospital, scholarships for underprivileged youth, and an annual Christmas fundraiser at Buckingham Palace Gardens. At 34, he'd already lived multiple lifetimes. He'd studied at Oxford before moving on to Harvard Business School. He golfed with princes and lunched with heads of state. His opulent townhouse in Mayfair housed an exquisite collection of modern art, and his personal chef was rumored to have once worked for the royal family. Yet, behind that meticulously orchestrated life lay a desire he couldn't easily name, some restless itch that not even Caroline Evers, his sophisticated and loving wife, could entirely calm. Caroline, a Boston native who'd moved to London for her graduate studies in anthropology, had met Marcus at an Oxford alumni gala. Their whirlwind romance quickly gained attention. Caroline's grace, intelligence, and genuine warmth appealed to Marcus in ways that society women with more contrived airs never had. Within a year, the two were married in a lavish ceremony that saw the who's who of European nobility in attendance. The couple's early years were nothing short of enchanting. They travelled to the Maldives, strolled the Champs-Élysées in Paris, and hosted benefits at Kensington Palace. But as Caroline's pregnancy neared its 7th month, she'd found herself increasingly alone in their grand townhouse. Marcus was away, always away, entangled in the demands of his business empire, or so he claimed. In truth, the cracks were forming. Marcus had grown distant in subtle ways, forging a path of secrecy that Caroline sensed but couldn't fully decipher. She confronted him once about unexplained absences and suspicious text messages on his second phone, a device he insisted was for business emergencies. He'd brushed her off with well-practiced charm, leaving her with a lingering disquiet. Because of her pregnancy, Caroline tried to focus on the positives, reading up on parenting books, chatting about nursery designs, and dreaming about their baby's future. She distracted herself by volunteering at the British Museum's archival department, determined not to succumb to the anxieties gnawing at her. Yet beneath her calm exterior lay a growing suspicion that the man she loved was slipping away, carrying secrets she had yet to fully discover. What Caroline didn't know was that all her quiet suspicions would soon erupt into the brightest spotlight. Marcus had already planned a secret meeting with someone named Genevieve Palmer, a name that would, before long, embed itself in Caroline's nightmares. And on one momentous night at the Savoy Hotel, everything she believed about her marriage would come crashing down. Caroline's intuition became her silent tormentor. She could no longer ignore the dissonance between Marcus's reassurances and the cold reality of his frequent late-night calls, withheld glances, and unpredictable schedules. At first, she tried to rationalize each event. The myriad messages coming in at odd hours from investment partners, the urgent board meetings that conveniently aligned with candlelit dinners on receipts she found hidden in his suit pockets. One evening, as Caroline rummaged through the study for a property deed, something the couple needed for mortgage paperwork on a countryside estate, she discovered a crisp envelope addressed to Marcus. The letterhead read Palm Court, the Ritz in shimmering gold script. Inside was a reservation confirmation for a private table dated for last Thursday, the same night Marcus had claimed to be in Manchester, finalizing a real estate deal. Caroline's heart pounded like a war drum. She sank onto the leather chair, her mind racing. The Ritz was one of London's grandest venues for afternoon teas and lavish dinners, frequented by aristocrats and celebrities. Why would Marcus be there if he was supposedly in Manchester? And who had accompanied him? Her first reaction was to dial Marcus's personal number, but she stopped mid-thought, recalling all the times he'd deflected or softened her worries with charming half-truths. Could she face that again? She decided otherwise. Instead, she phoned her close confidant, Sophie Langford, a fellow American living in Chelsea. Sophie was known for her investigative tenacity, once a journalist, always a journalist. "Caro," Sophie said gently after hearing the story, "I don't want to jump to conclusions, but something's off. If you need me to help find answers, I will." Caroline hesitated. She disliked the idea of spying on her husband, but the alternative was to remain ignorant until the cracks in her marriage devoured everything she cherished. "Please," she whispered, "I need to know if I'm losing my mind or if something truly is happening." That night, Caroline hardly slept. Her baby kicked, perhaps sensing its mother's turmoil. She caressed her rounded belly, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "It's going to be okay," she murmured, as though reassuring herself more than the child. "We'll figure this out." Little did she know, Sophie had already set the wheels in motion. Armed with her media connections, Sophie planned to discreetly interview staff at the Ritz, cross-reference credit card transactions, and leverage well-placed sources. If Marcus Beaumont was up to something, Sophie intended to find out. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus occupied a private suite at the Four Seasons, face glowing from the reflection of city lights. Beside him on a velvet sofa sat Genevieve Palmer Jenny, as she preferred to be called. She wore a black off-the-shoulder designer gown, swirling a glass of champagne with the air of a woman who knew precisely what she wanted. Marcus found her captivating, her boldness, her fearlessness, and the way she listened as though his words were the only thing that mattered. It was all so exhilarating, dangerously so. Yet somewhere in his mind, a flicker of guilt stirred. Caroline's face appeared radiant and trusting, her hands protectively over her growing stomach. Marcus shook the thought away, allowing himself the indulgence of Jenny's piercing gaze and easy laughter. For the moment, he chose desire and excitement over loyalty. But fate, he would soon learn, has little patience for betrayal without consequence. Genevieve Jenny Palmer was a fixture of fashion shows, gallery openings, and exclusive soirees attended by Europe's young elite. Rumor had it her father had once been a high-ranking government minister in France. Others claimed she was the daughter of a famous Italian actress. In truth, no one seemed to know Jenny's real background. But in London's high circles, she was seen on the arm of prominent men, attending events at the Tate Modern or sipping expensive cocktails at Annabelle's in Mayfair. Her latest conquest, it seemed, was none other than Marcus Beaumont. They'd first crossed paths at a private fundraising gala for the Royal Ballet. Marcus, thoroughly bored by polite conversation with donors he barely knew, had found himself intrigued by Jenny's unfiltered wit. She had teased him about his tie, questioned him pointedly about his philanthropic motives, and even beat him at a game of poker in the lounge afterward. A spark, one of those dangerous, all-consuming attractions, ignited between them. The relationship evolved from flirtatious texting to a clandestine romance. Their first covert dinner at La Dame de Pique had ended with them pressed against the tinted windows of Marcus's car, the city lights blinking around them like conspirators. What made Jenny different was her refusal to worship him as the rest of society did. She toyed with him, she challenged him, and that set his blood on fire. In the plush suite at the Four Seasons, Jenny allowed Marcus's hand to rest on her knee. She leaned in and whispered, "You know, one day secrets have a way of being exposed. Are you really prepared for that?" Marcus exhaled, the faint lines of tension creeping across his forehead. "Right now, I just want to be here. With you, I'll worry about the rest tomorrow." Jenny's scarlet lips curved into a playful smile. "Such a reckless man," she purred. "Good thing I thrive on chaos." Then she kissed him a kiss laced with the promise of ruin. Back in Mayfair, Caroline was pacing their townhouse. She swore she smelled the faintest trace of unfamiliar perfume on Marcus's jacket earlier that week. She'd asked him about it, but he just laughed it off, claiming it was probably from one of his mother's old friends at a fundraising lunch. His dismissive demeanor fueled Caroline's anxiety. Unbeknownst to her, Sophie Langford was already deep into her investigation. Sophie had found a Ritz employee who remembered seeing Marcus with a woman someone described as a stunning brunette with aristocratic poise. They'd shared champagne in the Rose Lounge, leaving in a hurry, arm in arm. Sophie shuddered when recounting this to Caroline the next day. "Caro, I'm sorry, but it looks like he wasn't alone." The staff said the two were quite intimate. Silence hung heavily on the phone line. Caroline felt the baby shift inside her. A cascade of pain threatened to crack her composure, but she steeled herself. For her child's sake, she needed the truth no matter how brutal it might be. Sophie's voice trembled with compassion. "What do you want me to do next?" Caroline took a breath, bracing for what she was about to say. "Find out who she is. If Marcus won't be honest, I have no choice but to uncover it myself." Far from suspecting his wife's growing wariness, Marcus lingered in Jenny's embrace, allowing temptation to guide him toward a disastrous crossroad, one where desire and devotion would inevitably collide. By the end of that tumultuous week, Sophie Langford's trail of informants led her to a name, Genevieve Palmer. The confirmation came from an upscale boutique on Bond Street, where Jenny frequently purchased haute couture dresses with a mysterious benefactor's credit line. The cashier, who owed Sophie a favor from their mutual days in the media world, was more than happy to gossip in hushed tones. Armed with the name, Sophie confronted Caroline, half expecting her to break down. But Caroline's immediate reaction was a fierce determination. "So that's who he's seeing," she murmured, turning pale. "Genevieve Palmer." The next day, as Caroline adjusted her focus from her heartbreak to forging a plan, an unexpected call came through on her personal cell. "The number was unknown," she answered, only to hear a purring female voice on the other end. "Hello, Caroline Evers," the voice drawled. "You don't know me, but I believe we share an interest in the same man." Caroline's blood ran cold. "Genevieve?" she asked, stunned at how quickly the conversation had turned surreal. Jenny let out a soft, melodic laugh. "So you already know. Impressive. I was under the impression Marcus wanted to keep us a secret." Caroline felt her stomach twist in knots, rage clashing with heartbreak. "Why are you calling me?" Jenny's tone was maddeningly calm. "Because I'm tired of sneaking around. Marcus swears he loves me, that he's stuck in a marriage of convenience, no offense, dear, and I'm done being in the shadows. The question is, do you want to continue clinging to your illusions, or do you want the truth?" Despite her trembling hands, Caroline mustered whatever dignity she could. "Don't contact me again. You have no right to intrude on my life this way." She ended the call, heart hammering, but her fury morphed into confusion. Had Jenny's words held any grain of truth? Did Marcus feed her lies about a loveless marriage? Or was Jenny simply manipulating the situation for her own gain? Meanwhile, Marcus found himself increasingly entangled in Jenny's demands. She wanted more than occasional dinners and stolen weekends. Over a glass of vintage champagne in her Kensington flat, she made her stance clear. "I'm tired of secrecy," Jenny declared, crossing her arms defiantly. "I'm not content to be a side affair. Either you commit to me publicly or I walk." Marcus, who had been loosening his tie, froze. "What are you saying?" She tilted her chin, eyes gleaming. "Leave Caroline officially. Or at least set up an arrangement so I'm not treated like a dirty secret. A place in the city, regular dinners out in public. Or you risk losing me, and maybe the credibility you've worked so hard to maintain." Marcus's head spun. Images of his unborn child, the scandal that would explode if the truth surfaced, and the unstoppable gossip machines of London's tabloids all crashed together in his mind. Yet there was a part of him that found Jenny's ultimatum thrilling, like teetering on the edge of a cliff, uncertain whether you'll fall or fly. He stared at the woman before him, consumed by a mixture of lust, guilt, and a strange excitement. "I need time," he finally said, voice hoarse. "This can't be decided overnight." Jenny tapped her lacquered nails on the glass table. "Fine, but don't take too long. My patience is not infinite." As night fell, Marcus realized he was standing on the precipice of irreversible choices. If he continued down this path, he risked not just his marriage, but also public humiliation and the well-being of his unborn child. Still, he found himself drawn irresistibly to Jenny's fire, heedless of the flames that threatened to engulf his world. London's skyline shimmered under a full moon. The Thames glistened like a ribbon of obsidian as Marcus and Jenny stepped out of a private car onto the courtyard of Hampton Court Palace. A charity masquerade ball was underway, a grand affair organized by the Duchess's Committee to benefit historical preservation. Masks and anonymity provided the perfect cover for couples who wished not to be recognized. Marcus wore an elegant midnight blue suit with a matching Venetian mask, while Jenny sported a figure-hugging black gown and an intricately decorated mask of silver filigree. Holding her hand, he felt a heady rush of sin and excitement, certain that no one would identify them. The palace grounds were aglow with lanterns, the courtyard filled with the strains of a live string quartet. "I can't believe we're doing this," Marcus whispered as they slipped through the costumed crowd. He'd never been so brazenly public with Jenny before. "It's exhilarating, isn't it?" she replied, a wicked smile dancing on her lips. "The risk, the romance, the possibility of being caught. You thrive on this, don't you?" His mind flickered to Caroline, then to the unborn baby. A pang of guilt shot through him, but he buried it beneath adrenaline. For tonight, Jenny's charms felt irresistible. They swirled into the dance floor, waltzing beneath crystal chandeliers. Each step took him deeper into a labyrinth of deception. Halfway across London, Caroline sat alone in the Mayfair townhouse, staring at the half-finished nursery. She'd been folding tiny clothes in pastel hues, imagining the day her child would wear them. But her eyes kept drifting to the clock on the wall, each tick echoing like a taunt in the silence. Marcus had texted that he'd be working late. She wasn't naive enough to believe that anymore. She couldn't handle the uncertainty any longer. Resolving to find proof, she placed a call to Sophie Langford. "He's out somewhere," Caroline said, voice trembling, "and I need to know where." Sophie responded with steely determination. Let me see what I can do. There's a big charity masquerade at Hampton Court tonight. He could be there, but it's invite only. I'll make some calls." Caroline found herself pacing. Her mother's old advice, "Never chase a man, dear. Trust him or let him go," echoed in her mind. But the stakes were far too high for simply letting go, not when a child was coming into the picture. So she steeled herself for whatever truth might come her way. Later that night, word reached Sophie that Marcus Beaumont had indeed been spotted at Hampton Court, or at least someone matching his description. Determined to confirm, Sophie arrived at the palace in a borrowed gown and mask, slipping past the gate with a press pass. Time was of the essence. If they didn't catch him in the act, plausible deniability would remain. Inside the grand hall, the swirl of dancers moved like a kaleidoscope of opulence. Sophie scanned the crowd, looking for Marcus's characteristic height and posture. A flash of recognition. There he was, near the side gallery, hand in hand with a stunning woman in black, their masks slightly askew. Sophie's heart pounded. She snapped a few discreet pictures on her phone and silently slipped away into the shadows. Marcus never noticed Sophie's presence, too enthralled by Jenny's laughter, too lost in the seductive thrill of the moment. He danced under the moonlight, believing himself invisible to the rest of the world. And that assumption, so brazen, so confident, would soon unravel into the biggest mistake of his life. By the next morning, Sophie had every intention of handling the photographic evidence delicately. She planned to share it only with Caroline, confirming beyond doubt that Marcus was indeed cavorting publicly with the mysterious Genevieve Palmer. But fate had other ideas. As Sophie travelled home after the masquerade, her phone buzzed incessantly. She saw messages from colleagues, even from an editor at a major tabloid. Word was leaking that a prominent London millionaire had been spotted at Hampton Court with someone who was definitely not his wife. The rumour mill churned with astonishing speed. By midday, a gossip blog had published tantalizing details. Though they withheld names, the descriptions were enough for those in high society to guess who the couple might be. Caroline awoke to a flurry of text messages and missed calls from Sophie. When she finally connected with her friend, Sophie's voice shook with urgency. "Caro, it's all over the gossips feeds. People suspect it's Marcus. I have pictures, clear ones that show his face if you look closely. We need to meet now." Caroline's heart felt like it was in her throat. She instructed Sophie to come to the townhouse immediately. Moments later, Caroline sat in stunned silence, staring at the phone as she tried to collect her thoughts. She recalled the nights she'd prayed for clarity, for a sign that her suspicions weren't baseless. Now that the sign was here, it felt like a punch to the gut. When Sophie arrived, the two women examined the photos. Though the couple wore masks, Marcus's distinctive profile and height were unmistakable, and the embroidered crest on his jacket, a custom detail, gave him away. Jenny's face, partially visible in one shot, revealed sculpted features that dripped with haughty confidence. The pictures told a damning story of intimacy, betrayal, and arrogance. Caroline's tears fell hot and fast. She pressed a hand to her rounded belly, trying to calm the swirl of anguish within. "He's dancing with her, like she's his wife," she whispered, voice trembling. Sophie placed a comforting arm around her friend. "I'm sorry, Caro. I wish it wasn't true." At that exact moment, Marcus was in a board meeting at Beaumont Holdings, blissfully unaware that the internet was buzzing about his night at the palace. Eventually, a text from his chief public relations officer, James Peters, jolted him. "We need to talk about last night. ASAP." Marcus felt his stomach clench. The worry he'd pushed aside came roaring back. He wrapped up the meeting swiftly and headed to his office, where James waited with a grim expression. "We have a serious issue," James said, thrusting a printout of the gossip blog onto the desk. The headline read, Mystery millionaire at masquerade, cheating on his pregnant wife? Marcus went ashen. He scanned the article, noting the references that aligned too perfectly with him, his philanthropic history, details of the party, even mention of his wife's pregnancy. Though the article didn't name him outright, it left little to the imagination. "You need to do damage control immediately," James warned. "If the mainstream press picks this up, you'll be front-page news. Your brand, your companies, everything is at stake." A storm of panic and self-loathing battered Marcus. All the secrecy, all the illusions of control obliterated by a few camera clicks. His mind raced to Caroline, the child she carried, and how viciously the tabloids could spin this into a scandal. He grabbed his phone, heart pounding, and called Caroline's number. She let it ring until the voicemail picked up. Marcus tried a second time, no response. He slumped into his chair, the weight of his predicament bearing down. Jenny was texting him too, demanding to know what was going on, insisting she'd had nothing to do with the leak. But Marcus felt cornered from all sides. And so began the countdown to the inevitable confrontation, a clash of love and betrayal that would test each player's capacity for honesty, resilience, and perhaps even mercy. It happened faster than anyone could have predicted. Within 48 hours, paparazzi had converged outside the Mayfair townhouse, cameras poised for any sign of the wealthy couple. Dressed in sweatpants and an oversized hoodie, Caroline had to maneuver past them just to get to her prenatal appointment, her cheeks burning with humiliation as reporters shouted invasive questions. "Caroline, is it true? Marcus was with another woman? Are you filing for divorce? Have you confronted your husband?" Caroline kept her head down, refusing to dignify them with answers. Inside her was a swirl of anger and heartbreak she could barely contain. She was determined to remain composed for her baby's sake. Yet as she sat in the obstetrician's waiting room, tears slipped down her cheeks, unchecked, while a sympathetic nurse handed her tissues. Meanwhile, Marcus found himself ambushed by reporters the moment he stepped out of his black sedan in front of Beaumont Holdings. They hurled questions at him about the Mistress, demanding to know why he'd publicly humiliated his pregnant wife. Security guards had to push them back so Marcus could slip into the lobby. Once inside, his PR team scrambled to craft statements that might quell the press. But everything felt hollow damage control at best, because the scandal was already too big. Caroline finally answered one of Marcus's calls, though her voice was ice cold. "Don't come near me until I say so," she said. "I need space to think." "Caroline, please, we need to talk," Marcus pleaded, desperation lacing his words. "I can come home, don't bother," she snapped, ending the call. For the first time since their marriage, Caroline felt a streak of righteous fury that overshadowed her heartbreak. He'd lied, humiliated her, and endangered the sanctity of their unborn child's family. She had no intention of letting him smooth it over with empty apologies. But Caroline wasn't content to let Marcus simply hide away. When she returned home, she called Sophie with an unprecedented request, a plan to confront her husband in a public setting somewhere he couldn't lie or twist the narrative. If he wanted to keep playing the public figure, she would force him to face the truth under the spotlight. Sophie's reaction was a mix of concern and admiration. "Are you sure that's wise? The press might feast on it." Caroline's reply was resolute. "They're already feasting. It's time to set the record straight, on my terms." With the help of a few well-connected acquaintances, Caroline arranged a seat at a high-profile charity event at the Dorchester, an event she knew Marcus would attend to quell rumors and placate investors. Invitations had been set weeks ago, long before the scandal erupted. She intended to stand by her husband's side, but not as a meek, supportive spouse. She had a mind to confront him about Jenny, about the betrayal, in front of people who adored him, Let the world see the truth behind the facade. She only hoped her breaking heart wouldn't fail her when the moment came. The gala at the Dorchester was a glittering affair, swarming with London's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow on guests in floor-length gowns and tailored tuxedos. The scent of lilies and expensive perfume floated through the air as society columns prepared their next day's headlines. Marcus arrived with his usual bravado, wearing a black tux and a carefully controlled expression. His handlers had advised him to remain unshaken, appear confident, but the tension in his jawline betrayed him. Nearly every conversation he had was peppered with subtle questions or veiled insinuations about the rumors swirling around him. Just when he thought he might slip through the evening with forced smiles and polite evasions, a hush spread across the crowd near the ballroom entrance. Heads turned, whispers erupted. Caroline Evers had arrived a vision in a sleek emerald gown that emphasized her pregnant figure. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple chignon, face set in a determined calm. There was a subtle fierceness to her stance that made the onlookers step aside as she moved forward. Marcus locked eyes with her across the ballroom. In that instant, the magnitude of his betrayal thundered inside him. Still, he approached, extending a tentative hand. Caroline stiffened at his touch, but allowed him to lead her to a quieter corner by the tall windows overlooking Hyde Park. The assembled crowd hovered at a distance, feigning ignorance while straining to overhear. Caroline's voice was steady, but each word sliced like a blade. "Congratulations on your performance, Marcus. Are you enjoying the attention?" He swallowed hard, searching for a private place in which to speak. "Caroline, not here, please." "Then where?" She shot back, low enough that only he could hear. "In another hotel suite with your mistress? Another secret rendezvous while I'm left alone in our house, wondering where my husband is?" His composure cracked. "Caroline, the first sorry. I made a mistake. But we should talk somewhere else." She let out a hollow laugh. "Mistake? You call a full-blown affair a mistake?" Her voice rose, drawing the gaze of onlookers. "Were you thinking of our baby while you flaunted her around at Hampton Court?" Colour drained from Marcus's face as he realized the scale of Caroline's fury and the audience they had now. Guests were gathering in tight clusters, eyes darting their way. This was the last thing his PR team had wanted, a public spectacle. Yet here it was, unstoppable. Tears welled in Caroline's eyes, but she refused to break down. "You betrayed me, Marcus," she said, her voice trembling. "You humiliated me. And you put your own desires above our child's future. I won't stand for it." She turned abruptly, ready to leave. Marcus reached out to halt her, but she brushed him away. The hush that befell the ballroom was deafening. Caroline's exit was swift, the train of her emerald gown gliding behind her like a banner of defiance. And thus, in front of London's most influential citizens, Marcus Beaumont was laid bare, a man whose fortune couldn't shield him from the public fallout of his own deceit. In the wake of Caroline's public expose at the Dorchester, London's tabloids churned out headline after headline. News outlets speculated on the future of the perfect couple, with some columnists lauding Caroline's courage and others questioning whether the marriage could be salvaged. Marcus tried calling Caroline dozens of times, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to frantic pleas. She ignored them all. That same week, something even more unsettling occurred. Genevieve "Jenny" Palmer decided she was done being cast as the villain in hushed whispers. She contacted one of the city's most notorious tabloids, the London Star, offering an exclusive interview. With each passing hour, social media buzzed with rumors about what Jenny might reveal. The day the article went live, it crashed the London Star's website. Jenny's comments were explosive. "Marcus and I share a special bond. Our affair wasn't a fleeting indiscretion." He told me he felt trapped, that Caroline was cold and indifferent to his needs. I believed him, and I gave him unconditional affection. Anyone in my position would do the same. If those words weren't inflammatory enough, Jenny went further, alluding to text messages that supposedly proved Marcus was ready to leave Caroline. She even implied there were business dealings related to their relationship, though she remained coy on details. Marcus read the interview in horror, each line stabbed at his already battered conscience. Some of Jenny's claims were pure fabrications. He'd never actually promised to leave Caroline. But in his guilt and confusion, he'd certainly led Jenny on in ways that gave her ammunition. Reporters began pestering Marcus's PR office for a statement. Investors started to question his stability, worried about the effect of bad press on his wide-reaching empire. Meanwhile, Jenny became a hot property on the tabloid circuit, rumored to have earned a hefty sum for her story. Caroline, upon reading the article, trembled with renewed anger. How dare Jenny paint her as cold and indifferent? Caroline had loved Marcus wholeheartedly, endured his endless business obligations, and tried to build a nurturing environment for their unborn child. If anything, she was the one starved for affection, left alone in a grand townhouse that felt more like a gilded prison. After a sleepless night spent pacing the nursery, she made up her mind. This time, she would not remain silent. If Jenny insisted on airing dirty laundry, Caroline would respond not with sensational lies, but with the raw truth of a betrayed wife. In one phone call to Sophie, she said, "We're going to fight back." Sophie, who had already been bombarded with requests for insider info, proposed a targeted approach. "Let's set the record straight with a reputable outlet. No sensationalism, just facts and your personal perspective. People should know who the real Caroline is." And so, Caroline prepared to face the cameras herself, determined to shatter Jenny's narrative. Beneath her heartbreak simmered a fierce protection for her child, a child who would not grow up overshadowed by scandal, if Caroline could help it. She would reclaim her story, no matter the personal cost. As the media frenzy raged, Caroline finally granted an exclusive interview to the London Daily Post. She chose the setting carefully. Her townhouse in Mayfair, the very place where she had endured sleepless nights wondering about Marcus's whereabouts. She intended to show the world she had nothing to hide. When the reporter arrived, a woman named Annabel Cross Caroline greeted her with a polite, if weary, smile. They settled into the living room, sunlight streaming through tall windows onto comfortable vintage furniture. The hush in the space contrasted sharply with the tumult outside, where paparazzi lingered behind wrought iron gates. Annabel's questions began gently, focusing on Caroline's life before Marcus. Caroline spoke about her passion for anthropology, her roots in Boston, and the scholarship that had led her to Oxford. She recalled the magical courtship, how Marcus had swept her off her feet with heartfelt gestures and philanthropic ideals. Then, with a sigh that betrayed her heartbreak, she spoke of the current storm. "My pregnancy was meant to be a time of joy," Caroline said, her voice trembling. "Instead, it's been overshadowed by betrayal. I discovered the affair through small clues, at first scented letters, suspicious receipts. And when I confronted Marcus, he claimed it was business dinners. But it wasn't long before the truth became undeniable." She paused, pressing a hand to her baby bump. "I'm speaking now because I refuse to let a tabloid narrative define my child's future. I'll not let that woman Genevieve Palmer twist the story to paint me as the complacent, uncaring wife. I'm not perfect, but I cherished my marriage. I was faithful, supportive, and ready to start a family with a man I believed loved me." Tears welled in her eyes. Marcus broke those vows, not me. Annabel placed a gentle hand on Caroline's, a rare moment of empathy from a seasoned journalist. "Thank you for sharing your side," she said. "Do you think there's a chance for reconciliation?" Caroline closed her eyes briefly, uncertain. "I truly don't know. A part of me still loves him, loves the man I once knew. But trust is difficult to rebuild, especially under such public scrutiny. For now, I'm taking this one day at a time, focusing on my baby. The interview's publication was a bombshell. Caroline came across as poised and resolute, garnering sympathy from the public. Opinion pieces titled "The Brave Mistress Beaumont and Caroline Evers, a Modern Heroine" began to circulate. Donations to her chosen charities spiked, and supportive letters poured in from strangers who had gone through similar heartbreak. Meanwhile, Marcus felt the ground shifting beneath him. He realized that for all his money and influence, he was powerless to stop the tide of public opinion from turning against him. He watched Caroline's interview, feeling every ounce of remorse stab through him like a shard of ice. Yet no matter how desperate he was to make amends, a single question haunted him. Was there anything left worth saving, or had he destroyed it all the moment he chose Jenny over his vows? A tense hush filled the Beaumont townhouse the night Caroline allowed Marcus inside for a face-to-face conversation. The paparazzi outside snapped endless photos of him entering the grand doors, fueling speculation of reconciliation. Inside, the atmosphere was anything but comforting. Caroline had changed into a simple grey dress, her pregnancy more evident than ever. She stood by the fireplace, arms folded protectively. Marcus approached slowly, hands trembling at his sides, unsure if he was about to be granted a chance or effectively banished forever. "Thank you for seeing me," he began, voice subdued. She offered no welcoming smile. "Don't read too much into it, Marcus. We need to talk, for the baby's sake." He inhaled shakily. "Caroline, I am so sorry. I don't even know how to begin to make this right." She locked eyes with him, bitterness in her gaze. "You start by telling me the truth, all of it. Why, Jenny? Why did you betray me?" Marcus swallowed, the weight of confession bearing down on him. He spoke in hushed tones about feeling trapped by expectations, how, despite his deep love for Caroline, a part of him craved the thrill of something forbidden. "I never meant to hurt you. I was selfish, careless, and I realize I risked losing everything truly valuable for a fleeting temptation." Caroline's eyes misted with tears, but her voice remained steady. "It wasn't just a mistake, Marcus. It was a choice you kept making, over and over." He looked down, shamed. "I know, and now I'm left with no defense. I've fired my PR team's attempts at spin. There's no excuse. I can't even blame Jenny entirely. I brought this upon myself." Caroline's throat tightened. She remembered the nights she'd lain awake, worrying if he was safe, only to learn he was entwined in another woman's arms. "I don't know how we can move past this, Marcus," she whispered, voice cracking. "But I do know one thing. I won't let our child grow up in a web of lies. If we continue, we must rebuild everything from the ground up: our trust, our marriage. And I don't even know if I want that anymore." His eyes glimmered with tears. "I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, a post-nup, anything. I'm ready to walk away from Jenny entirely. I already cut off contact, but I'll do more. I'll stand before the press and confess my wrongdoing if that's what you need." A silence stretched between them, heavy with unsaid truths. Finally, Caroline turned away from him, her gaze falling on the black and white ultrasound photo on the mantel. "We'll see," she said softly. "For now, I need time to see if you mean what you say, if you truly can change." Marcus stepped closer, hesitant. He gently placed a hand on her belly, feeling the life within. Caroline allowed it for a moment, tears slipping down her cheeks. It was a fragile truce in a battlefield, marred by betrayal. Neither of them knew whether the next steps would lead to healing or irreparable heartbreak. But for that one fleeting instant, They stood united by the unborn child who deserved more than the sum of their mistakes. Caroline's tentative acceptance of Marcus's remorse set off a chain of uneasy events. At her insistence, he cut every tie with Jenny Palmer phone, email, any potential business connections. Marcus even changed his number and instructed his lawyers to serve Jenny with a cease and desist letter, forbidding her from spreading further falsehoods that could harm Caroline or their unborn baby. Jenny's reaction was immediate and explosive. She appeared on a televised morning show, fiercely defending herself. "I've been made out to be some seductress," she argued. "But the truth is Marcus pursued me, and now he's discarding me to save his marriage. It's absurd and cruel." Still, her public pleas failed to garner the sympathy she'd hoped for. Public opinion largely favored Caroline, an expectant mother wronged by a faithless husband. Jenny soon found invitations to high-profile events drying up. Friends she'd partied with at exclusive clubs became scarce. On top of that, the tabloids that once gave her a platform stopped returning her calls, sensing the public had already moved on to the next scandal. As Jenny's star faded, Caroline and Marcus entered a new, uneasy chapter. Marcus cancelled several business trips, determined to remain in London for the final weeks of Caroline's pregnancy. He arranged couples therapy with a reputable psychotherapist in Knightsbridge. The sessions were raw, emotional, and often ended in tears. Caroline voiced her sense of betrayal, the sting of humiliation, and her deep-seated fear that Marcus might stray again. Marcus, for his part, acknowledged his destructive thirst for novelty and risk, vowing to change. They fell into a fragile routine, shared meals in the townhouse kitchen, gentle walks in Hyde Park, where Marcus carefully guided Caroline over uneven paths. Some nights, they'd watch old movies curled up on opposite ends of the couch, neither quite ready for the intimacy of the past, but trying to find a spark of warmth. Meanwhile, Sophie Langford acted as a protective shield, intercepting intrusive reporters and managing Caroline's schedule. She also quietly arranged for enhanced home security, after noticing a few particularly aggressive paparazzi lurking around. The fortress-like environment underscored the truth. Normalcy seemed far out of reach. Within therapy, Caroline posed the toughest question of all. "Why should I believe you won't do this again, Marcus?" The room fell silent, tension so thick it was suffocating. Marcus slowly exhaled. "Because I've learned that I can't live with the shame. I've tasted what it's like to nearly lose you, and it's not worth any thrill or fling. I'm prepared to sign legal documents, ensuring that if I break our vows again, you get everything, full custody, financial assets, whatever. I don't want to walk away from my family, Caroline." She studied his face, searching for sincerity. The therapist watched them, taking notes. "If you're both willing," the therapist finally said, "we can explore rebuilding trust step by step." Outside the window, night had fallen over Knightsbridge, the city lights shimmering. The question lingered in the silent room: could a marriage so deeply fractured ever be truly mended? Or was their effort a desperate attempt to salvage something irreparably broken? As Caroline neared her due date, a sense of cautious hope glimmered. Although the wounds in her marriage remained fresh, small gestures hinted at potential healing. Marcus surprised her by decorating the nursery with a celestial theme, soft blues, tiny stars painted on the ceiling, and a rocking chair placed next to the window. Every brushstroke felt like a penance, a vow in color and craftsmanship. Still, nights often found Caroline restless, haunted by images of Marcus and Jenny dancing beneath chandeliers. She'd lie awake, one hand on her belly, replaying the heartbreak. Sometimes she would see Marcus moving quietly through the hallway, pausing at the bedroom door as though unsure whether he was welcome. Their dynamic hovered between closeness and distance, trust and doubt. In the city beyond their townhouse, talk of the scandal cooled. Society columns moved on to new controversies, some actresses' rumoured affair, a billionaire's abrupt bankruptcy. Life in London's high circles was cyclical. Old news was quickly forgotten in favour of fresh gossip. For Marcus and Caroline, however, the repercussions lingered, shaping their everyday. One crisp morning, Caroline decided to visit the British Museum for a small exhibit opening. She had volunteered there before the pregnancy, cataloguing artifacts from a recent archaeological dig. Stepping into the museum's grand hall felt like reclaiming a piece of her old self, independent, intellectual, passionate about culture. Marcus offered to drive her, but she politely declined, preferring a moment of solitude. He didn't push, he merely left a soft kiss on her forehead. At the exhibit, the warmth of old colleagues and friends enveloped her. Some hesitated, unsure how to address the scandal, but Caroline's gentle poise disarmed them. She responded to sympathy with a grateful nod, and to awkward queries with minimal, honest replies. After an hour of pleasant conversation, she found herself stepping outside to get fresh air. That's when she saw Genevieve Palmer. Standing across the street, Jenny's gaze locked onto Caroline with an intensity that made her stomach drop. A pang of anxiety flared. Instead of turning away, Caroline walked toward her, each step echoing her resolve. A passerby might have thought the two women were acquaintances meeting by chance, rather than adversaries entangled in a love triangle. Jenny looked worn, her hair a bit disheveled, her makeup not as flawless as before. She forced a tight smile. "You're looking well," she said, gesturing to Caroline's belly. "Almost time, isn't it?" Caroline nodded, her throat tight. "Yes, another few weeks." Silence swelled between them, charged and painful. Jenny finally sighed. "I didn't expect everything to turn out this way. Marcus made promises, maybe I was naive to believe them. But I never set out to ruin your life, Caroline." Caroline felt a burst of anger, but also an odd compassion. "Yet you did, and you sold our private pain to the highest bidder." Jenny lowered her gaze. "I needed relevancy. Doors were closing on me. I guess I was desperate." Caroline blinked, taking in the frail woman before her. Had Jenny faced her own punishment, shunned by the very world that once admired her? Tension hung in the air, but no resolution came. Caroline simply said, "Desperation doesn't justify what you did, but I hope you find a better path forward." With that, she turned and walked away. The conversation was brief, but in those few words, Caroline released a shard of the anger she'd carried for so long. It was neither forgiveness nor reconciliation, merely an acknowledgement that the suffering ran deeper than tabloids could ever reveal. In a world where illusions crumbled, perhaps they each deserved a chance to find a semblance of peace. True to the doctor's predictions, Caroline's labour began in the early morning hours of a chilly autumn day. She woke to mild contractions, which intensified quickly. Marcus, sleeping in the adjacent guest room, bolted upright when he heard her call. He rushed to her side, supporting her through each wave of pain as they made their way to the hospital. Inside the private maternity ward, the reality of fatherhood struck Marcus with full force. The beep of monitors, the nurse's calm instructions, Caroline's breathless cries, each moment felt monumental. He clutched Caroline's hand, whispering encouragements, tears forming in his eyes. The memory of his betrayal haunted him, making him wonder if he deserved the miracle unfolding before him. After hours of grueling labor, a sharp cry filled the air. A baby girl emerged, healthy and robust. The nurse handed her to Caroline, who held the tiny life against her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. Marcus hovered close, overcome with awe. He gently kissed Caroline's damp forehead. "You did it," he murmured. "She's perfect." Caroline turned to look at him, her expression a mixture of love, exhaustion, and unresolved pain. In that moment, despite everything, a glimmer of unity enveloped them parents, united by the life they created. The next few days were a whirlwind of babies' first cries, late-night feedings, and constant checkups. Well-wishers sent flowers and cards. Sophie arrived with a hamper full of essentials, giving Caroline a heartfelt hug. Even certain journalists wrote empathetic pieces about new motherhood, overshadowing scandal. Privately, Caroline and Marcus found themselves in uncharted territory. The presence of their daughter, whom they named Aurelia Grace Beaumont, changed the dynamic. Caroline saw glimpses of the man she fell in love with in the way Marcus tenderly rocked their infant, humming lullabies. He had cleared his calendar to be with them 24/7, an act she appreciated yet didn't fully trust. On the day they brought Aurelia home, Caroline stood in the nursery, gently placing her sleeping baby in the crib. Marcus hovered behind her, hands trembling. He placed one tentative hand on Caroline's shoulder. "I know it's too soon for forgiveness," he said, softly, voice laden with regret. "But I want to be worthy of this family. I'm willing to work for as long as it takes." Caroline didn't turn around. She stared at their daughter, a tiny bundle of hope. "I can't promise you anything yet," she whispered. "But for Aurelia's sake, I'm willing to see if we can heal." She finally turned to face him. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but so did a flicker of something else, determination. Their marriage might be cracked, but it wasn't entirely beyond repair. After all they'd endured, the scandal, public humiliation, heartbreak, a fragile seed of possibility remained. That night, as Aurelia slept peacefully, Caroline and Marcus found themselves alone in the dim living room. They spoke in hushed voices, not as enemies or strangers, but as two people bound by an unbreakable bond. They knew the path ahead would be rocky, strewn with doubts and unhealed wounds. But they also knew that, for the sake of their daughter, they had to try. A single secret ignited a public spectacle, forever altering Marcus and Caroline's world. In the glare of London's society and relentless tabloids, their marriage teetered on the edge of destruction. Yet with heartbreak came a powerful reckoning. Choices had to be made, truths confronted, and painful lessons learned. Through it all, a glimmer of hope emerged in the form of their newborn daughter, Aurelia, reminding them that even the deepest wounds can begin to mend when love and responsibility take precedence. If this rollercoaster tale of betrayal, courage, and redemption moved you, please like this video, share it with friends who might appreciate a gripping drama, and subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories. Your support encourages us to bring you tales that speak to the resilience of the human heart, even when put to the ultimate test. Thank you for being part of this journey.